Whenever you guys do, first.
So take the table. I guess just start it.
Yeah, it is. It's on live.
Nobody get up. And don't talk.
All right, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Keep getting your food, but we're going to start with the business so we can leave enough time for our representatives today. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. Just a couple of notes before I forget. There's some note cards at your table, so if you have a question for our legislators, please write it here and we'll gather them so we can get through as many as possible. I know some of you emailed them in, so thank you. And then if you didn't get a chance, you can sign our cards over here for our law enforcement officers. We're going to be sending them an appreciation note next month. And then lastly, there's a little Venmo thing on the table for our charity, which is Cherished Families. So if you want to donate to them, you can do that, or you can bring toiletry items. We kind of bring things each month to help them out throughout the year. So, all right, we will start with our prayer by our chaplain, Sharon, and then our Americanism by Carol Brackett. And we'll go to that point. Sharon, sorry, you probably didn't hear. We're going to go to your prayer. She's helping over there.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we're thankful to Thee for the spring weather, for this beautiful area in which we're grateful to Thee to live in, and for the ability to be together. We're thankful to Thee for the large turnout today, especially for our newcomers, and for the hospitality of the city of Santa Clara for this spacious venue. We're grateful to Thee for a successful caucus last month, for high attendance, and for our members and associate members who were elected, that they may faithfully, honorably, and enthusiastically carry out their duties at our county and state convention, and may they have a good time doing so. We're thankful to Thee for the opportunity to welcome back our representatives and senators as we look forward to hearing about the legislative session. We're thankful to Thee for our state legislature, for defending women by preserving girls' sports through their decisive override of Governor Caucus' veto of House Bill 11. We're grateful to Thee for those who have served us well, but who are now stepping away from service, that they may leave with a feeling of pride and contentment for having served. And we're thankful to Thee for Justice Thomas and for his return to good health following a recent illness and hospitalization. Father, we ask Thy blessing for all those elected in caucus, that they may enjoy the conventions and feel empowered to bring change to our state and country come November. We ask Thy blessing for our legislators, that they may feel encouraged by our support and feel a renewed dedication and spirit of patriotism as they continue to serve. We ask Thy blessing for all the families who have lost loved ones in Ukraine. And lastly, Father, we ask Thy blessing for our leaders in Washington, that they may truly comprehend the current peril in the world, the harm it may cause our beloved country, and that they may be deliberative and wise in their decision-making throughout this onerous time. We humbly ask these blessings in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
I'm going to do an Americanism and then we'll do the Spanish. So, thank you, Bill. Appreciate all of you. Okay, here we go. Washington County is a great place to live, and judging by the traffic, I guess the secret is out. But even though the traffic can sometimes be crazy, there are those special moments that we have all seen when a driver gives the service of allowing another car to enter a busy lane. I have seen this done many times, and that kindness always warms my heart. There are a lot of good people who live here. We especially want to thank you for signing the cards for our local law enforcement. We are very grateful for them and they appreciate our support. And we will be delivering those cards next month. Also, on May 7th, the Ironman World Competition Championship will be coming to St. George, Utah, leaving Hawaii for the first time since 1978. It is going to be such a big event that it will require an army of volunteers. And on May 9th, there will be a party complete with dinner and entertainment and prizes for those who have helped. We are so fortunate to live in an area where service is an important part of our culture. Whether giving service to this organization, a church, a school, a local charity, the food bank, an animal shelter, or just being courteous on the road, everyone's contribution makes a difference. We also appreciate those who serve in political and elected positions. We thank you for your willingness to listen to the people you represent, your courage to do the things that are right, and your countless hours of service. Lieutenant Governor DJ Henderson has said, one trait that consistently sets our state apart is the commitment Utahns have to service. Utah leads the nation in volunteerism and is consistently ranked among the top states for both service and charitable giving. I didn't know that. I thought that was very cool. Utahns are passionate about extending a helping hand to those in need and are actively engaged in their communities at the local levels. Dieter F. Uchtdorf said, as we lose ourselves in the service of others, we discover our own lives and our own happiness. Thank you for all that you do and the service you give. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I did it all by myself. Somebody forgot to come get me.
Thank you so much. Carol and Sharon do a great job every month. We want to welcome our Sunshine Caucus. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us. We really appreciate it. We look forward to this annual event every year to hear about the session and to ask our questions to them, so we appreciate them. We also have our other elected officials here. We have our county commissioners. I think I saw all three. Victor Augustin, Adam Snow, and Gil Almquist. There's Gil. We have, I think I saw Mayor Nanette Billings come in. Thank you. We've got Councilwoman Michelle Tanner. Awesome. Let's see. Who else am I missing that snuck in? Anyone else we missed? Okay. Well, thank you for being with us. We are going to have our membership report by Marianne Cote, and then our county party chair, Lisa Sandberg, has a quick announcement. And then we will go to Shirla Snow to introduce our panel.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, we're pleased to announce that we have 29 new members so far this year, in 2023. And we have 2 new associate members and 8 members, which I would like you to stand when I actually give your name. Sally Bigler, new member. Carol Hodges. Pat Perrine. Barbara Powell is another one. Debbie Allred and Donna Scoville. WCRW currently has 78 members and 14 associate members. Of our 92 members and associates, 47 are GEM members. These members pay money to our club beyond the $35 annual dues and have essentially helped to eliminate our need to fundraise. What do we do? Yes, very good. Gem members, silver is Don and Nita Brown. You want to stand up, guys? Gold member is Nikki Miller. And then we have our associate is Colin Jack. And we would ask you to consider, if you're not a gem member, consider being a gem member. It's great. It's got a few perks too. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I know that Sharon mentioned this in her prayer, but I want to say a big shout out to everyone in this club who became either a precinct leader or a delegate. If you did, would you stand? Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Thank you for participating in caucus. We outshone, I don't know if that's a word, the entire state on our caucus attendance. Other county chairs were so jealous, so I'm so proud of our county. We have an exciting thing coming up that we wanted to, it's kind of become a tradition that things get announced here before anywhere else. So we wanted to announce a new event that we're going to do. That's our first annual, and we hope it will continue. Who knows what Juneteenth is? Yes, Alexis, what is Juneteenth? As your mouth is full. Oh, you know what it is then. Yeah, so when the Emancipation Proclamation happened, Texas didn't get on board for a little while, and they were the last state to free their slaves. And that date was June 19th. And it has now become, as of last year, a national holiday. And we, as a Republican Party, ought to be pretty darn proud of that date. It was a Republican president who declared that. And sometimes I think that the world forgets that Republicans are for independence for all. So we're going to celebrate with the Black community in Washington County, Juneteenth. We're going to be bringing in Amala F. Kenobi, I think that's her name, from PragerU. She's awesome, and we already have several members from the Black community that are helping us plan a nice entertainment portion of that. So it's going to be really close. We hope you'll mark your calendars for June 17th, because that's Friday. June 19th is on Sunday this year. And we'll be doing that at the Dixie Center. It's going to be lots of fun. So hope you all will come.
I get to introduce these handsome men to my left. First, let's see, Don Edson, who has a very fine collection of cars, but you should see his collection of tractors. Senator Evan Vickers loves popcorn and always takes the stairs when he's in session. I don't know, maybe they go hand in hand. Representative Travis Segmiller loves the outdoors, and he raises dwarf Nigerian goats and miniature horses and bulldogs and an adorable little son, where he is, that I just met today. Representative Walt Brooks. Representative Walt Brooks. Now, folks say that there's a stadium named after him, but I think it might be his grandpa. Representative Brad Last always has a Diet Coke on hand and is so patriotic that he named his sons after U.S. presidents. Okay, the question and answers will be facilitated by Commissioner Snow. And we will first hear from Senator Vickers because he has to be in Salt Lake to another meeting later today. So, gentlemen, you know the drill. You each have your 3 minutes, and it's all yours.
There we go. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. I always look forward to this. And by the way, my schedule did change a little bit, so I don't have to be in Salt Lake tonight. So that's good. But I appreciate you letting me go first anyway. Every session kind of takes on a life of its own, and this one did as well. At the first day or two, it really had some unique things, and the last day it had some unique things, and in between we did an awful lot of work, a lot of quality work. So if you remember last year, we were sitting here and we were talking about emergency powers, and we were talking about SB 195 and how we redid our statutes that hadn't been changed since 1953. Well, that played out in the first week of the session, because if you remember, Salt Lake County, Salt Lake City had put in place a mask mandate for businesses and the community. And it's been going on for a while, and their county council had agreed to that, hadn't rescinded it. Previously, when they tried to do it in schools, they had, but they left it in place. So SB 195 laid out a process whereby if the data showed that it wasn't really effective, which we had gathered that data and showed that to them that the counties that were not doing mask mandates, their rate of transmission was actually lower and their hospitalization was lower. So the legislature, under the prerogative of SB 195, did a resolution to rescind that mask mandate in those county and city. And there was 3 counties: Grant County, Summit County, and Salt Lake County. So we saw that play out. That happened right at the very first of the session. In between, we did an awful lot of work, and I'll let Representative Glass and Senator Ibsen talk about the specific on budget. But there was a lot of money we were dealing with, a lot of things. I would just highlight a couple of things. Last year, we said this is the year of the tax cut. If you remember, Representative Brooks had the piece that raised the cap on Social Security, and then we added some money for a child tax credit that would lost in the Trump tax credit, Trump tax law, and we also did some. It was on. Let me grab this one. This is still on. And so then we also added a cap on military retirement. So this year was also the year of the tax cut. Actually, it was a bigger tax cut, SB 59. If you remember that bill went through, it did 3 things. And I actually was the lead sponsor on that bill. Senator Miller and I actually were the lead sponsors on that bill until we decided it was probably best to have our Rev and tax chairs run the bill. So we let them take it over, and then we became co-sponsors. So the bill dropped the income tax rate from 4.95 to 4.85. It went to the House, and Representative Brooks had another big say in that. He also raised the cap additionally on Social Security. So what I mean by that is that raises the level where you have to start paying state income tax. So now I think arguably almost everybody that's receiving Social Security will not have to pay state income tax. And then there's an earned income tax credit piece put in place. So those are some things that happen. I want to say something a couple of things that are unique about Utah. The reason that is, so Haven Barlow, a long time, in fact, he was the longest tenured legislator in the state of Utah, passed away this year. I don't know if you know that name, but his son, Stuart Barlow, is actually a member of the House right now. He's a physician and a member of the House. Haven was instrumental in creating some unique things in the state of Utah. So when you think about Congress, it's a handful of people that do the budget. You have the Ways and Means Committee and your budget committee, and they're the very few that really actually have a stake in the budget. In the state of Utah, it's different. Every one of us, every legislator sits on an appropriation committee, and we have to say what's going on. That was started by Haven Barlow. So another thing that I don't know if you can attribute this to Haven, but another thing that's unique to Utah is that we separate our money into 2 pots, into ongoing and one time. And that's very critical because many states, I remember I had a colleague in North Carolina in the legislature. He says, well, we just put one-time money into an ongoing program. And it played out that money went away and they didn't have any money. So we look at it completely different, and we're very careful of how we do that and very conservative. And so if we got money that is one time, ongoing programs. We're very conservative about that. And so those are some unique things. And one other unique thing we started a few years ago, really, and I think President Niederhauser is the one that started to push that. He was the president of the Senate at the time, is using what we call working rainy day funds. And what we'll do is we'll take ongoing money, and Brad and Don can tell you how much we put into that. I remember it's a few $100 million, and we'll just use that for one-time projects. So that we have to get in a situation, which we know we will the next 2 or 3 years, when the federal money dries up and the cliff comes, we will be prepared. Not only do we have our rainy day funds stocked away and maxed out, and we continue to add to those, but we also have these other funds that we're using like the rainy day funds. We'll just use them one time, and we're expecting to see that next year. So, maybe just a quick couple of things just I want to share with you.
Thank you for the opportunity of letting us be here with you today. Honored to be here. You know, we had an abnormal budget year. A lot of it was federal money. The ARPA funds that come because of COVID, it was sent back to the states to pay this programs to help with. Our state didn't see the downturn that other states did, so we had an enormous amount of money to deal with. Unfortunately, we had an enormous amount of requests. We had almost double the requests for funding for people's pet projects and whatever. Almost double the money that we had to spend. And there were a lot of people disappointed. It's hard to manage expectations. Representative Last, we're very fortunate to have him sit on the House Budget Committee as the chair. We'll miss him. We're going to miss that opportunity for Southern Utah to have this state leadership that he will lead here. We put $1 billion in infrastructure for highways. We put an extra amount of money into public and higher education this year. We built a new building at Dixie State College, Dixie State University. Hard to get away from college, isn't it? And I was the guy that runs the bill to change it from college to university, so I should be paying attention to that, right? So we really did accomplish a lot of things this year with our budget process, and we worked hard. And Senator Vickers talked about we took $100 and some million and stuck away in a special rainy day fund for the tax cuts. We had 197 million, I think it was, the total tax cuts. Included it's 193, which included the amount that Senator Vickers was primary. He worked all summer. Him and Senator Milner, they worked all summer on that tax cut. And when the session started, he said it was decided to let the appropriations chairs for tax and revenue deal with that. But I'm telling you, the process, we owe a lot to Senator Vickers because he put a lot of untold hours of work into that. So we're blessed that Utah be considered the best managed state in the nation. We've had surpluses that are unbelievable, but I believe that there's a cliff out there somewhere, and we managed to put money away so that we will be prepared for that. So that's kind of my part of this session.
Thank you again for being here. This was a really busy session for me, maybe because I finally figured out where the bathroom was at, so I can get to know that. It gets busy, but like there's a few bills that I ran and that are championed, and one of them was the tax bill that Evan started, and how much work that he put into that in turn it over to Casey Snyder on the House side to be able to work through that language and be able to add pieces to it. Personally, I think the tax on Social Security is the worst tax ever because it literally is a double tax. I already articulated it. We just move that amount up so if a couple is earning $62,000 or less, they don't have to pay any tax on their Social Security. And that's about the median income in the state. Can't push it. It took a long time. It's been 6 years to get to this point. So it's been a lot of effort to make sure that we are being as responsible as possible with the money that's coming in and taking as little as possible. Don mentioned how we've been measured against other states, called rich states, poor states in Utah. Is it 13 years down the road that we're ranked number one? And that didn't happen by accident, but it happened because of really conservative values. And both of them mentioned about infrastructure, like into roads and different things. Well, all this money coming in, you watch what other states have done. We're not the only one that got, $750 in the mail or whatever else, and everybody else bought a new four-wheeler, a new car, or whatever else. All that money now comes to the state, and they know that that's not coming again next year or the year after. So you've got to be smart. And with this money, what can we do that actually would make us stay the best quality of life we possibly have? And that's putting that money into something that's generational, something that makes a really big impact. One was roads. Another one, as we did down here, I was lucky enough to run. It was called the request for appropriation. Don was key advocate in that, and so was Brad, because he's the chair on the House side, is $15 million for St. George to get money for the graveyard wash, which is just right over here, about a mile away. And that's going to be a place to store the sewer water after it's been treated, instead of letting it just go down the river, pump it back up and use it for secondary irrigation. And what that will do is take the pressure off of culinary water for 6,100 homes. And it's not just St. George or Santa Clara or Ivans, it's connected to the larger system, our Conservancy District has really put a lot of good effort into the future growth. So that water that can be stored here can be moved all the way over to Tokerville. So it's really going to benefit all of Washington County. And so those are something that is generational. I remember when I was 14, Paul Creek, and the burden that was put on me. I got a school teacher with 8 kids, so of course he was loaded, right? And but it was a burden, but he knew that these things have to go into place so that St. George could thrive and it could grow and his kids could be here. And this type of effort, instead of just putting into fun projects or twinkly little things, I think it's not that sexy, right? Or a pipeline, but it really makes a big difference in where we're going to be, not just today, but 30, 40, 50 years down the road. So it was fun to be able to be a part of that. Being the chair of the retirement committee that looks over special entities, we went through and started looking at every special entity. There's several of them out there. Are they really a good representation of the state dollars? And we found that doing that, so we dissolved them and took the money back and put it back to the general fund. Is trying to make that smaller. There was probably a good reason when they did it, but now we have the proof. And did it really meet the goals? And if they don't, then we need to pull them back. And that's what's great about our whole republic and the state. We can try these experiments, but then have the conservative values to go back and say, did it meet the goals or not, and make those adjustments necessary. So it's been kind of fun to be part of that process.
I think maybe people here would disagree with Walt that dams are not very sexy. I think in Washington County, dams are really sexy. So hopefully we can build a few more in the near future. These guys have talked about most of the important stuff. One of the things that we've done in the legislature over the past many years that I think has been incredibly helpful to the legislature and to the state is that we've built a very strong infrastructure of people. And I'm speaking about our support staff, excuse me. And in my case, in Don's case, we deal very closely with the fiscal analysts, and we also have legislative research and general counsel. And we've also built systems over time, data systems and things like that really help us in our decision making. And I always like to point out to people that because everybody's carrying their phones around nowadays, and we've just created some pretty amazing budget tools. And I always encourage anybody when we start talking about the budget, just pull out your phone and just look at budget.utah.gov. And you can get some of the highlights that we've just been talking about. And if you want to do it now, I encourage it. But there's just lots of really good information that you can pull up very quickly, and you can really impress your friends at parties and things. If you just walk in there with a few highlights on the top of your mind, and you can tell them how big the state budget is, and you can tell them how much we're spending for different aspects of the state budget, and they will be really impressed for about 30 seconds. Anyway, the state budget for the current year that we're in, which ends on June 30th, is the biggest state budget we've ever had. I think it was $27.3 billion. And the budget that we have for the year that begins on July 1st and goes to the next June 30th, so next year, is $26 billion. That's a little bit smaller just because we don't have all the one-time money from the federal government that we will be putting into the budget again next year, unless they do something else crazy like they have been. So anyway, $26 billion. And I think when I got to the legislature 20 years ago, it was maybe, well, I'm pretty sure it was less than 10 billion. So we've had pretty dramatic increases, but it's been pretty consistent with the growth in state population. So anyway, we had some special challenges that we had to deal with this year at the legislature. And again, Don mentioned that we just had all this federal money that was really creating difficulty in trying to figure out what our base budget revenues are. What's the revenue that's really coming into the state, or that will continue coming into the state? And so our analysts and our economists were putting a lot of risk factors into the revenue projections, and that's why we put so much money into one-time things this year, and that's already been mentioned. But that's been a strategy that we've used over the years, which sets Utah up to be in a very good situation next year, because we're not going to have obligations that we can't meet. We also have a pretty unique situation in the state of Utah and in the country, really, but Utah is in a worse situation, and that's just the employment situation. Any of you that have businesses, you know what you're dealing with, trying to find employees. Every restaurant you see, really just about every company you see has help wanted signs. We have the same situation going on in the state, and it's across the entire state government. And I work at Dixie State University. I can tell you that we're having real challenges attracting people and keeping people, especially when, for example, a professor comes in here, accepts a job, and then they go out and try to find a place to live. And then they have to come back to the university and say, we can't stay. We just can't afford a place to live. So housing is a big issue. We put quite a bit of money into housing and did the best we could to encourage local governments to do things to help with the housing situation. We also added a lot of money just into the budget for state employees. I mean, we increased state employees by 5.75%, which isn't as high as inflation, but I think in the time that I've been in the legislature, that's the highest increase we've given to state employees. So, on the one hand, that may sound bad because we're increasing the state budget, but at the same time, we need to have great people working for state government, and if we don't pay them, well, they're not going to stay. Another thing that was sort of mentioned, Walt talked about the graveyard wash project, but one of the things that we did with a lot of the federal money was water projects throughout the state. I mean, we allocated over $400 million to water projects. You heard some about the Utah Lake initiatives. You heard quite a bit about the Great Salt Lake initiatives. Also, there's initiatives throughout the state to do secondary water metering, which is kind of a controversial issue even down here. But we're trying to do the things that give us the best bang for the buck in terms of preserving water, because if there's any one thing that's going to be a disaster for us in the coming years, it's going to be if we run out of water. And it will be especially damaging to the economy here in Washington County, because so much of it is driven by the construction economy. So anyway, that's something that we did, and that goes to what Walt was saying about generational investments. Anyway, lots of other things we could talk about. This was a great session, I think, for the legislature overall, and especially for Southern Utah. Certainly great for some of our big institutions. Dixie State University came out of the session very, very well. Tuacahn came out of it very well. There's a group of people trying to put together a community theater. They got some help, and there's other areas as well. But anyway, overall, it was a great session, and I think we did a lot of good things, but we also made a lot of good decisions to set the state up for the future.
Thanks, team. I'm looking at Adam's eyes back there. What we were told, 3 minutes, right? 3 minutes. So I'll cut mine down even shorter if I possibly can. But first, I wanted to say thank you. As I look around, this is the core crew of Washington County's conservative hearts, minds, and souls. And I've seen, just in the past couple of weeks, it's been such a pleasure to meet with so many of you personally, or in other meetings, and to see so many faces that we've been talking to just nonstop for the past couple of weeks makes me think of that. First, the thank you for that, the dedicated hearts, minds, and souls who are truly serious about conservative government and the conservative principles of our Republican platform. You're it, and we're grateful to you for that. I'm grateful to you for that. And thank you for being here today. It's not just about having a fun lunch, it's hopefully about gaining some knowledge, and that makes me think about that James Madison quote, the father of our Constitution, right? The simple quote where he said, "Knowledge is the only guardian of true liberty." And so I see so many of you who's been involved in this pursuit of knowledge these past little while with this after the session has ended. And then today is another example of that. And I wanted to thank you for that. I want to say thanks to you for making room, for being the kind of group that would make it where it would be okay for my little 2-year-old to join us, and for these other young guys. We've got some more kids up here. When our babysitter situation fell through, we had a moment of panic, and I said, think of where we're going, Lisa. This is, who on earth would be opposed to a little 2-year-old guy joining us for lunch? And so thank you. We're the party of the family. And thanks for making room for little TJ back there. These guys did such a great job. Thanks, team, for carrying the heavy weight on a lot of the details. So I'll just wrap up with a reminder about a few principles. One is, we keep hearing Utah is the best managed state in the nation. We've won a lot of awards in a lot of categories, but that's not by chance. It's due in very large part to this document, which is the Utah Republican Party State Party platform. And one of the big sections that I love the whole thing. That's why I'm a Republican, but I love the section right after the preamble. We start out at the very beginning, kind of like our Constitution does, but this crucial concept, in this case, the proper role of government. And we go on in our own platform, we say, and this is brief, we believe government properly exists by the consent of the governed and must be restrained from intruding into the freedoms of its citizens. The function of government is not to grant rights, but to protect the unalienable God-given rights of life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. So when I think of why these successes are happening, it's not because the folks on this panel are so brilliant, right? I mean, that's pretty obvious when you hear me speak. You know that's not true, right? But it's because collectively you elect people who have a certain ability. And this is the number one thing I recommend for us all to, I know we all do it, I recommend that we all do it, I hope we all do it. But when we're choosing people for office, we choose people who, and this is an underpinning of our success, who exercise constitutional self-restraint. When given the power of the people, by the we the people we elect then predominantly go to the Capitol and self-restrain themselves to not over-exercise like the California, what are they called there? House of something, right? I forget what their official name is. But we're not in any way, I shouldn't say, we're not in most ways like California. And what we're doing is we impose these self-restraints upon us where we take the people's power very seriously, restrain ourselves to not over-exercise it, and then do our best to accomplish the proper role of government that is the very undergirding of our party platform. And so because of that, that's the reason that we're able to say things like Utah's the best managed state. Now, there's a whole lot of nuts and bolts to go into it, overwhelming amount of information about how and why that happens. You've heard a whole lot of great stuff about that coming up to this moment, but don't forget the big undergirding principles that we are successful as a party because we elect people who go to the Capitol and do what the party platform says to fight for the proper role of government that largely includes self-restraining from over-exercising the power of the people, so that we really do have a limited government in the state of Utah. That's a huge undergirding of our success. So that's a big congratulations and thank you to all of you for electing the kind of people that can make that happen. Thank you.
Let's see if we can get the two mics going. We love and appreciate our associate members, so we thought it would be fun to involve our associate members. So we've asked Adam to kind of moderate our questions here. If you had a question that didn't get picked up, just kind of hold it in the air and I'll come around and grab it.
Yeah, this is working for now. All right, we just want to start off seriously. We wanted, I can't file through them all here. I'll grab it in a second. Hey, we got one right there. First of all, there are several that just wanted to say thank you for serving. Thank you for this is a thankless job as a lineman in football in high school. I understand thankless jobs. You never get a lot of credit, and yet you are the heart and soul of the team. So thank you for serving. And Travis, next time we will make sure you get the memo on dark blue jacket. Apparently all of us coordinated our wardrobe this morning. So we need to work on that next time, Travis. That's our bad, not yours. I only say that because Commissioner Almquist loves ties and I hate them other than church. So, okay, so several of the questions, some of them, if your question doesn't get read exactly because we don't have quite enough time for as many as we got, there are some that are very close. So I tried to lump a few of them together. But the first one, and if you really don't feel like you want to answer, that's okay. You're elected. I know you have this internal visceral need to speak, but if you want to pass, you can. Can each legislator or senator tell us about your favorite bill that you got passed this year?
So before last night, I would have given you another bill. But last night I was in an event at SUU and I was sitting with some students, and one student talked to me about, he was a nursing student, he was finishing up, he's in his last semester, and he told me about this great program that allowed a nursing student in their last semester of their schooling in good standing that they could apply to DAPL and get an apprentice license where they could actually begin working as a nurse under the direction of another nurse in the hospital or another kind of clinical setting. And he was telling me how great it was, how awesome it was, how much it was going to benefit him, and how it was going to help him to get into a job at the hospital there to Cedar, and it was going to allow him to get off and running right off the bat. Actually, I ran that bill. It was SB 101. And I thought, holy cow, it really works. So once in a while, you do a piece of legislation that stands out and it has a
Two of the bills that I think I'm happiest was I run a set sponsor on a bill that dealt with mental health for first responders and put some money into the budget for that. And the other one was a bill that protected healthcare workers being able to prosecute someone who attacked them in a hospital clinic setting. I think those were two bills that were really needed. And, it takes kind of like Jerry Hens said once, takes a good meeting to be better than no meeting at all. It takes a really good bill to be better than no bill at all, and I think these were two bills that were really needed.
You got a request?
Can we stand up?
Yeah, if we can stand, some people in the back.
All right, hello everybody. Well, a couple of them, they take years. the most important ones are the funnest ones to work on, take years to get involved, like Social Security took 6 years, and then constitutional carry took a couple of years to get through, and then so we had one this year that didn't quite get through, it's vaccine passport prohibition, and we come back next year, I'm really looking for, but besides those, I got a bill as a floor sponsor to lower tint windows, so you can have a darker tint on your car. I don't know about you, but I'm so happy about that. Good for me.
Yeah, it's the local things that really have an impact on us, right? I haven't run too many bills the last few years because I've been so involved in the budget, and I love those budget bills, you know. But you don't want to talk anymore about that. So the county commissioners came to me, speaking of local issues, and they said we got a little issue with our transient room tax. We had so much transient room tax in the last little while, and based on the law, it kind of restricts. Well, in one way, it forces you to spend it when you're not ready, and another way, it restricts how you can spend it. So we just ran a little bill, pretty simple really, but kind of complicated when you get right down to it. That gives the county flexibility to handle this big, what can you say, windfall of transient room tax that came through during the COVID year.
I love what Donaldson said when he said it has to be a pretty darn good bill to be better than no bill at all. And that harkens back to those principles that I mentioned when we the people give the lawmakers power to act on behalf of the people, the people's power. Then, like our platform says, there has to be a lot of self-restraint in that. And that's one of the underpinnings of my political philosophy and the way that I think about my role as a lawmaker is I think of myself as a true constitutional conservative where I'm constrained or restrained by the Constitution because it's your power, not mine, to fight for freedoms, not to do anything that would restrain your freedoms. And so I'm not, whenever you hear this term that says, oh, she's a really successful lawmaker. She's the number one because she introduced 26 bills. You heard the term of judicial activism, right? Where we're worried about judges that make policy from the bench. That's not their job. Their job is to interpret the original text of the Constitution and apply it. I also would be worried about activist lawmakers who don't understand that principle of just constitutional constraint, who instead of self-constraining to abide by the party platform, are instead just cranking out piles and piles of bills. So in my case, I don't do that. I've never done that. Every year, I never introduce more than maybe between 4 to 6 total bills. That's in the category of just the ones that I'm the sole sponsor for, not the floor sponsor or the co-sponsor or the other, or someone who's on the team of trying to help get it done. So you'll never see me handing out a big long list of bills that says, look at the dozens of bills that I'm trying to get done, because making the law more complex, making the code bigger, adding to the complexity of the law. I think a big goal of us lawmakers should be to repeal, repair, or replace the parts of the law need to be fixed, and we do a lot of that. Many of the bills you see pass, and by the way, this is not a complaint about the total number of bills that were passed this year. You guys might know the number better. What was it? 591, something like 512. We passed 512 bills. I think 9 higher. Check my notes. 9 higher than last year. So that's not to say that number is in and of itself is too high, because many of the bills in those 512 are ones that do just that: repeal, repair, and replace stuff that needed to be fixed. But to the issue of what's something I've been working on that I'm really proud or happy to see come to fruition, it's been spoken a lot about the tax cut that happened this time. I wish it was a little bit bigger. I think we all do. But every single year that I've been in office, I propose at least one bill that's an income tax cut, income tax reduction, and oftentimes multiple bills to reduce taxes, whether it's in the property tax category or others. And so to see this year the whole legislature come together in a real show commitment to reducing taxes, for me, was a true thrill when the big bill passed that we've been talking the details about today, about those multiple layers of tax cuts, the earned income tax credit, the Social Security cap component, and then the bona fide income tax cut rate for individuals and businesses, all that pulled together. And in principle and concept, I've been really big behind those concepts my whole time in office. And so while I wouldn't say this was me that did it, because it wasn't, nevertheless, it is an example of exactly the kind of thing that I've been pushing hard for all my time in office. So that's the one I would point to, and I'm really glad that we got that accomplished. And again, that's an example of that constitutional self-restraint, right, where we don't do too much and we give it back when we can.
All right,
We're about 2 minutes.
okay, we'll just go off this one. So what makes, we'll start with you, Senator Ibsen, on this one. What makes an effective legislator, and how do you balance principle with being an effective advocate for Washington County?
Well, I think the main thing that we have to remember who sent us there, who we represent, and what we're there to do. And I think that's important. You hear a lot about, well, the lobbyists have an input. I'll tell you that every one of us has a lobbyist on the Hill. They help ferret out the good bills and bad bills, whether we like them or not. And I think that one thing that sets this group apart, and everyone to a person, is our ability to do what we say we'll do. And I think that our reputation on the Hill gives us credibility with the entire legislature, and that's important. Remember the old story when he had Hutton talks, people listen? There are people on this panel that's really true. I'm not one of those, but I will tell you that one thing you'll get from me is a straight answer. You might not like it, but you will get a straight answer.
In fact, thank you. I think I was talking to one of you that asked me that same question, because I wasn't really involved in politics before. I didn't have this history of being on the city council or anything. I just yell at my TV, if that counts. What I learned going up there's just two things that you have to have is your principles, whatever they may be, because things can get confusing really quick and you get persuaded really quick. So you have to have principles. And the second thing is what Don illustrated. You have to be honest, because things are going so fast and everybody's involved, like in an appropriations committee or different standing committees. And so when you have a bill, someone comes and asks you a direct question and you misrepresent it, you're done. You're absolutely done. And there's a handful up there that when they say things, it doesn't matter. And they don't get anything done because you just can't trust what they say, because there's no time for it. You really have to lean on those who you trust and that are both similar, because everybody's unique, everybody's different. But there are people that vote like us or think like us. And so someone may be in a natural resources committee, and I'll reach over and say, hey, what does that bill really do? Does it do this and this? I have some people asking these questions. And I don't have time to go through all the rigmarole. I need the straight answer where it's at in the bill so I can direct people to it. And they give you that answer. And you have to rely on that. And so those two principles, that's why I think most people that I meet that are principle-based and just good, honest people, they can do this job. And they can do it extremely well. Because when it comes down to it, you're representing people, respond back to what you say you're going to do, and your record's there to show it.
Is this for everybody? Sure.
It doesn't have to be.
If you have any, if you're done, I'll take it back.
Well, I'll be very brief on my supervision, but I just said everybody what's said, but I'll actually get it in this way. Number one is correct, truly conservative core values, number one. And then among those correct core values, at the very top of the list is personal integrity. And I think that's what you've heard echoed here today, like what's been said. So that's my, just number one, correct core values built on conservative principles, and chief among them, individual integrity.
Yes, better stand up. And I was talking to Don, I said, maybe the old guys just have to sit here. But, let me just say quickly, so I got asked this question the other day. I'm going through the delegate process right now, and I had a guy ask me, he said, so how do you decide to vote on the bill? And we talked about that, and so it goes along with this question. But number one is the relationship you develop. I don't know about you, but throughout my life, whether it be in business, whether it be in church, whether it be in politics, you name it, in developing how effective you are is a lot of it is developing relationships. Don and I went into this house together. I remember the first year we talked about we need to develop a relationship with every legislator up here so we know what makes them tick. I mean, because it's a light legislature and they all have different expertises in that area. So you need to know, like Walt said, go to somebody that knows about that particular bill. But real quickly, I was asked that question, and so it made me really think. And so I thought through my process. Well, number one, as I've learned over the years how to read a bill pretty quickly, and you can do that real quickly, to understand does it make significant policy change? Because of those 500 bills, quite frankly, 300, 350 don't make much policy change. They're changing something basic, and that's it. So does it make a major policy change? Does it take away from a person's liberty in any way, shape, or form? Is it expanded? Is it hurting? How do my constituents feel about this particular topic? Do they weigh in or they don't? Does it affect religious liberty, which is a big deal to me? If it's spending, if it's money, where's the money coming from? Is it appropriate? Is it appropriate spend? Are we going to get our bang for our buck? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Those kind of things. So I kind of developed over the years a way of going through that. And then if I get through that and I still don't know, then I use those relationships to go to talk to somebody that knows.
I've learned to just ask Kevin.
Okay, so the default is ask Kevin. All right. What does the state legislature plan to do to counteract the left's strategy to use corporations, i.e. woke capital, or ESG on this one, I'm guessing?
Yes.
To circumvent the political process to enact major social and policy changes? Who wants to start?
Let me just say that, how many of you know what ESG is?
Yes.
Good. I'm glad most of you do. I hope you're scared to death of it.
Yes.
If you, at the county convention, if you happen to be there, you'll probably hear from our state treasurer, Marl Oaks, and he'll talk about it a little bit. He sat me down and said, I think you probably had an interview with most of us, the first part of the session, we talked about it. The bottom line is that he and our attorney general currently are looking and reviewing what has been done in other states, if it's effective, because when we pass something like this, it's so important, we want it to be impactful. And so we're working with them and we'll expect some feedback from them. And I expect to see some action during the interim on that as well. So.
Well, Emily hit it. Basically, I sit in the Business and Labor Committee, what this is really coming from. And we had some bills that come out, they weren't vetted very well. They were just kind of on the surface. And so we made that a studied item. One of the main points that we'll do through all summer months is talking about ESG scores and how they're implemented, how they're affected, and how they're basically using outside the scope of elected officials to control our lives. And so there's going to be a lot of effort. I think Utah's doing a very well thought out approach on this to really dig into it and get people in front of it and hear some testimony so we know exactly how to make sure we have a good policy going forward. Like Evan said, what is working and what isn't working, because there's no reason to try to fall on someone else's hole that they've already dug.
All right, this is going to be an easy one. What is your position on daylight savings time? There is only one answer.
No. No.
My wife really likes daylight savings time. So because to keep peace in the home, I've always voted against any change. Although I did vote and do support having daylight savings time year round.
No.
I think what,
Body's not made for it.
so my adopted mother lives in Panguitch, sends me a text every year and says, you can fix daylight savings time. The hardest text I send all year is saying to her, we don't have the ability to do that. Now, if you notice, the Senate passed to go to daylight savings time full-time nationwide. I think whatever we do, we have to do it together. For example, we ran a bill a session or two ago that made it so that so many of our surrounding states approved it, we'd go to daylight savings time year round. Now, you're already an hour different in Nevada. If we went on that, it'd make us 2 hours different if they didn't do it. So that's an example. I run a business, been in the transportation business for years, and have a terminal in Phoenix. It's a nightmare. They don't go on daylight savings time. Half the year they're on Pacific time, and half the year they're the same time we are. And it's a nightmare switching back and forth. So I think whatever we do, we have to be together nationwide.
If you want to.
Something that's not constitutionally based, I put out a survey and about 70% of the response back said they want us to take the daylight savings time, what we do right now in the summertime. So that's what I support.
That's because they don't understand what it's doing to your bodies.
I've never liked daylight savings time. I still don't. I think it's stupid.
Thank you.
And I think changing is one thing, but I like to get up in the morning. I'm really productive in the morning, and
Amen.
I hate getting up in the morning and it's dark.
Amen.
And the fact that we're up clear on the end of the mountain time zone creates problems for us. You know, if you go down to Las Vegas and your watch rate or your clock wakes you up, your phone wakes you up, and it's light, and you're like, what the heck's going on here? You know, so that's a big difference for us anyway. But I'm with you. I don't like changing, and I think in the summertime when there's a lot more light, if businesses want to, they can stay open later and open later. You know, they give them the choice. So why do we take it back and forth and drive kids and old people crazy?
I've got a lot to say on this, but I won't. There's other more burning issues, I'm sure, so I'll pass that on. I appreciate what's been said already.
You're not gonna answer. That was wise, giving someone feedback. Well done. Okay, there's a ton, and with time running short, the predominant issue here is on election integrity. Many of your constituents are very concerned about voting machines and voter fraud. What can you do? What can the state legislature do to ensure voter integrity? And that's going to encompass most of the rest of the questions, not all of it. But we'll let you kind of take that as you will. Who wants to start on that? Brad? You haven't yet, so you were the next one.
I'm not going to be there, so I'm not going to do anything. But I think, but I don't buy into the voter fraud. I'm just going to tell you straight up. And I think that it's a sad thing in this country, what's happened, in terms of questioning the integrity of voting. Are there some isolated situations where there may be some problems? Yes. Are they widespread? I don't believe so. And in Utah, are they widespread? I don't believe so. And as an elected official, I've had the opportunity to go in with the county clerk and watch how they handle the voting. I'm speaking primarily of the mail-in voting, and I think there's a lot of integrity in the mail-in voting. Are there situations where there may be an isolated problem here or there? I'm sure there is. Is it widespread? I don't believe so. Does it make a difference in the elections? I don't believe so. And so I'm not going to be there. Like I said, I'm not going to make any changes. But I think that this has been hyped up to the point that is ridiculous, and I simply don't buy into it.
I will tell you that as for Washington County, what our clerks do, they're, like Brad said, there may be some mistakes made, there may be some isolated issues, but if you've got a question about ballot integrity, I tell you, you need to go to the clerk's office and watch the process. I've done that. And, I was concerned that I didn't believe that the privacy of my ballot was concerned. I went there, they satisfied me. You sign it, and they ripped that off first, and I was concerned about that. I thought that the secret ballot thing could be played out, but I'm telling you, in Washington County, our clerks, we do not have an issue with voter fraud.
So I can echo those thoughts because I sat down with my clerk in Cedar City in Iron County and sat down there and him and his staff went through the process. So I fall into that camp that I feel like the Utah has really let out and done many things to ensure where we're at. With that being said, does it hurt to continue to work on it? No, absolutely not. In fact, a couple of bills this year, we put it in place in the HB 313 cameras that requires cameras on each drop box. And so when that bill first came out, it was requiring the locals to pay for a big chunk of that. And so it was stripped out in committee, but then we put it back in and funded it, which is, I think, an appropriate thing. If we're going to require that on a state level, we fund that. We allowed, required, and another bill was, I forget the number, was it 376, HB 376, that required monitors at the polling spots, you know, where they're counting, where the counting spots, to allow people to visually see what's going on and allow the poll watcher within 8 feet. We had some additional provisions on audit. One was during our legislative management committee. We did that earlier in the year, and there's some continue to be some pieces on audits and how we can audit and make sure involving our legislative audit committee. So, but I will say this too. I was at a town hall meeting in Cedar City with Chris Stewart, and he was asking questions about election integrity. And he says, the one thing you have to realize, if the public ever loses faith in our election process, we're in bad shape. So we've got to continue to be vigilant on making sure that that is accurate, everything is accurate.
Haley, how many more? And what time do we have? All right, one or two. Oh, okay. Next one on the list. We're gonna have to go fast here, else we'll just start clapping. What is our most problematic issue that you anticipate for next year? Not all at once, sorry.
Yeah. We just, there's always carryover. Let's see.
Most problematic.
Sounds like Travis wants to.
He's thinking out loud.
So the question is, what is the most problematic issue that the 2023 legislature?
What concerns, what keeps you up at night for next year? That the state legislature actually has the ability to do something. For instance, tax increases, law enforcement, Medicaid funding, medical marijuana, things that are state relevant. All right, we're gonna bring it back down here.
So I'm just thinking about things that either didn't get done, we're working on, you know, or are not perfect yet. So two issues right off the top. ESG is one that we're gonna have to work on. We're gonna have to address. And the other one is the transgender athlete issue. It's not perfect. It's far from perfect. It's really messy, by the way. And we're gonna have to continue to work on it.
Transgender.
So Evan can't say he's old anymore because he keeps drawing these bills by number and talking about them. I think that's incredible.
That's why you can't sleep at night. You got all those numbers going around.
There was 5 different questions that all surrounded Utah Tech. So how does your vote on Utah Tech represent your constituents and your thoughts on that?
So I guess I'm the outsider on this one. So I didn't have a dog in the fight, you might say. I have never, you know, I don't live down here, haven't done, I haven't gone to school here, I didn't have kids go to school here. So at the end of the day, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, where am I at? And so I just decided, look, I've got, at the time, I had 3 counties. Now, soon my district will be encompass 5 counties, but the 3 counties that I took, 2 counties never even weighed in at all. I had 1 email from one and 1 email, didn't even have one from 1 county. So I thought, well, I've got a lot of constituents in Washington County, 45,000 people or so. So I'll see where they lay. And quite frankly, those that responded to me said that we want to keep the Dixie name. So that's how I vote.
I worked really hard to keep the Dixie name to try to get that so that it did not pass, the change didn't pass the Senate. Wasn't able to do that. Kevin was a good friend and stayed with me. One of the things that we did was we if we could see that that was going to pass, we put a process to keep a heritage committee to keep the Dixie name on the campus. That committee's being chaired by Lyman Hafen and Steve Snow. Now, you don't know where you can get more down-home folks than that. They helped put together a committee, and we will retain the Dixie name on the campus and set up the legislature appropriated some money to do that. And we will work diligently to see that that's protected in the future as far as the campus name.
I know that no one would have to actually ask me that question because they know where I stand. But I really appreciate, like Henry, I come at him a lot with a lot of questions, and Brad, and I have a lot of respect for those people there. But in my opinion, I think it's crap. So I'm not with you. I see where they're going and why they want to do that. I just disagree. So, but I appreciate I live underneath the Dixie on both sides. In fact, I called Henry, go, hey, there's lights out on that D. Right? And Henry got on the ball and made sure we got lights up there. I believe Dixie.
I guess I'm on the different side than the rest of them, and very proudly so. The Dixie thing, obviously, this has been a really controversial issue for me and my colleagues, and I've been working hard. Everybody knows that I work at the university, but I've been working hard to affect the name change. There's a couple things about it. There's the branding side. There's the message that we're sending to the world as we're now a much larger school and a Division I athletic program. There's that piece, and then there's the other piece that nobody ever wants to talk about, which is, what does Dixie mean? We know what it means here, and it's positive, it's great, we love it, but just in the little segment that we had to begin this, we were hailing President Lincoln doing away with slavery. And isn't that great? And aren't we proud as Republicans that you did away with slavery? And yet we sit here and we say, let's have symbols on our university campus that tie right back to that era. Does that make sense? I don't think so.
Yes.
And while we love the term Dixie here, and it means a certain thing to us here, it doesn't mean the same thing to people outside. And when you're out recruiting students in California, and you don't even put the Dixie name in front of your table or up on the wall, you have to go out and try to bring students one-on-one and have a conversation. That's problematic. And there's a lot of anecdotal stories. Does it affect everybody negatively? It's not. And do I think that Dixie is a great name for a high school and for the technical school, the vocational school? Absolutely. Is it the right thing for a university where we're recruiting students from all over and sending students all over? I don't think so. And so when you talk also in that same segment that we had, the Americana segment, that said, legislators need to do what they think is right. And I'm telling you, I did what I think is right. So you can question all of the aspects of the name change, but I'm not backing down from it, and I'm telling you that I think history will serve the university well because of the name change.
So I probably disagree with almost 100% with Brad on that. But that doesn't mean that I don't respect what he just said. Because you heard him say, I did what I thought was right, and he knows why he thought that was right. He spent years thinking about this issue, and the fact that he's able to stand before you with a fully straight face and say, I did what I thought was right, that's what we elect people to do. And so God bless him. Honestly, I mean that all in the heart. But by sharp contrast, I totally disagree. And here's a cute little example in our home. My kids were talking about what Dixie means, and one of them, we were talking about it with them, They said, well, it means our ancestors came here and it was hard for them and it made us tough. And it means that we have lots of red dirt in our white socks when we do our laundry. So but for me, it was, in short, I listen to my constituents very closely on this issue. For me, it was just overwhelming search. I've never had so many people who cared so much about the issue. And so I stuck with them and I was totally opposed to the name change.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Haley says we get one last one, and so just limit it to one. But can you name any, whether you sponsored it or not, a bill that was? Let us know a bill that was passed that directly impacts or affects our lives or our pocketbooks.
Yeah, SB 59, I started out being sponsored. Tax caps. Amen.
Get over it. Of course, the tax cuts and also the investment in the infrastructure, I think we'll really see some, as we travel north, we'll see a lot better traffic situation over time, depending on the streets we go on, due to this $1 billion that's invested in infrastructure too.
I'm entirely sure that you all got the point of that question there. You rode Senator Vickers' coattails, but that's okay. Because we're out of time anyway, so.
In fact, we did.
You did name one, and so that was the direct legislative wording of that question. Good job. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for the answers and for facing your constituents and return and report back to them. And with that, if you have any further questions we didn't get to in this stack, I'm sure you can reach out to them. And Haley, I'll turn it back to you.
Let me just add one quick thing. Two people, Senator Representing Snow and Representing Last, have chosen not to run again. I hope you, and like I tell people a lot of times, just because we disagree doesn't mean put you in good company, because my wife and I don't always agree on things. But I just want to tell you, and I want to pay tribute to those two legislators and the impact that they've had on this state and on Washington County and everything they've done. These are great men, and Brad and Myra have both been mentors of mine, and I really am going to miss them. I know we'll all say that same thing, but I just want you to know this.
We'll be back at Abbey Inn on May 5th is our next luncheon. So thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day.
I think we have